Welcome to Faith Family First. I'm Jim Hochberg. Today we're going to talk about the upcoming ballot that you're going to start getting in your mail October 21st because it has some charter amendment proposals. We're only going to cover Kauai because KSU Radio carries this for the people on Kauai and Honolulu, obviously. But you know what? If you're on Maui or the Big Island, or Molokai or Lanai, if it's not Kauai and Oahu, listen up because the approach to the questions can be the same for you, even though we're not necessarily going to get into the substance of the proposed changes. But we just don't have time to do them all, and Maui had a lot. But anyway, stick with us and let's talk about that. So, Eva, you ready for charter stuff?
Let me speak on behalf of everyone watching and listening right now.
Oh, no, we're going to make this really interesting.
No, okay, Jim, let's be honest. When people are at the ballot box or now here in the state of Hawaii, they're looking at their ballot and they get questions that are like, the expletum of the master logical fraction of a lingo is a square root to the comprehension of the third power. Yes or no?
Well, that's why we're going to do this show. Because
so listeners,
we vote and we have political power according to Article 1, Section 1 of the state constitution, and we must exercise our political power. So what we want to do today is talk about first the Kauai proposals and then the Honolulu proposals. But before we even get into the proposals, I want to talk about what frame of mind I use when I get asked these questions, because the way I view it is the way James Madison viewed it. And he wrote a bunch of the Federalist papers, one of them Federalist 51, and he actually published Federalist 51 February 6, 1788. But the Constitution that he was supporting that was adopted the next year is so good, it still applies. We're still using that same federal Constitution. What he said, it was Federalist 51, is trying to get people to understand the structure of the Constitution, not being the government running things, but the people running things. And what he says is, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. Think about that. That's pretty true, right? We could trust angels. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, meaning no angels, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, the people, and in the next place, obligate the government to control itself. A dependence on the people is no doubt the primary control on government. That's why Constitution of Hawaii, Section 1, Article 1 says all political power in this state is held by the people. But he goes on to say, but experience has taught mankind the necessity of having other precautions. And then he goes on to talk about the separation of powers. The federal government has this power, the state governments have that power, local governments have this power. So in the charter situation, in case people don't know, the county charter on all the islands is equivalent to the state constitution for the county government, which means it sets up how the county government's going to work, who's going to do the work, how they get there, what their responsibilities are. And in order for the charter to have been adopted, just like the federal constitution, just like the state of Hawaii Constitution in 1959, the people had to vote for it at a supermajority. So when they want to amend it, they have to come back to us. And what I want to make sure everybody realizes, when the county council, which is the legislative body on the counties, or the state legislature, which is the legislative body at the state of Hawaii, or Congress, the Senate and the House, the legislative body federally, They take your vote for them as candidates and they exercise it without your help every time they vote on legislation, except when they're asking for your approval to amend the county charter, the state constitution, or the federal constitution.
Now,
so you have really big power right now on these charter amendments. And what bothers me is how lightly voters in Hawaii seem to take their power over these requested votes.
Well, people, for the most part, don't even know who their city council members are. And I know that when there have been issues that have come up in certain areas, we've tried to encourage people to weigh in, and people don't weigh in as much on the city council hearings as they do on the legislative hearings. But I think that before we jump into this, it's to make clear that when you have these charter questions in front of you, just like I believe with a constitutional question, a blank vote is considered a no vote.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily? So it doesn't work the same way?
The county charters describe that on the county level. In the state of Hawaii, a state constitutional amendment, no vote, blank vote is a no vote, but not necessarily.
Okay, so how do people find out? Because that's important.
I would say don't leave it blank. Actually do your homework. In fact, that's why we're doing this show.
Yes.
So you got these proposed charter amendments on your ballot, and the state is mandated, the counties are mandated to provide educational materials to explain to you. So we're going to have the website for Kauai and Honolulu, hopefully Maui and all of them.
We'll have them all.
Click on the link if you're on YouTube. If you're on the radio, go to YouTube when you get home. Grab the educational materials early. Study them, read them, understand them. Please do not wait till the last minute to just grab your ballot because you got to mail it and just pick something. Don't do it.
And you don't have to wait till you get your ballot. That's the important thing. You can click on the link right now and look at it. And here's another tip. If you're reading the question, and even with the information they provide, if it still doesn't make sense to you, then contact your city council person and say, what is this? And what are you trying to accomplish by this? Or even the candidates that are running.
And ask them, what is the unintended consequence that's likely to flow?
Right.
Because that's what you want to know. And they're not going to bring that up.
They're going to have their talking points.
Exactly.
Especially on all of these things. Even when there's a bill moving through the legislature, they all have their talking points. And that's all you'll get. So you're right. Dig down
when
deeply.
You're looking at changes to the Constitution, either of the state or the charter in the county, because the charter in the county describes how the county government's going to work, be suspicious, because most of the proposed changes are changes so that the government workers can more easily do what they want to do, which they can't do without changing the language. So they're not necessarily doing you a favor by proposing this change. Really keep that in mind.
And I would also strongly recommend, now it's not going to help you right now with the questions in front of you, because like Jim said, you got to know what the questions are in front of you and how to vote. But moving forward in the legislative session, when you're talking about your city council meetings, you want to go to these meetings. You can even watch them online because you want to find out why they're trying to get to that.
The education material shares that, and that's what we're going to talk about today for Kauai and Oahu. So the language is crafted by the legislative body in the counties, the county council, through that legislative process, which means a bill got proposed, it had hearings in committees, the language got changed, it went through things until it would get enough votes to pass, which means it's sausage. So if you think back to 2013, in the state of Hawaii special session, we, the people, wanted a bill to preserve marriage to opposite-sex couples. We wanted marriage to be one man and one woman. And the legislature worked on it in their committees, and it came out being approved. And the question was, shall the legislature have the power to reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples? And as you and I remember back then, we did a lot of public education to let people figure out, what does a yes vote mean?
Because yes really
meant
meant no.
And what does a no vote mean? Because if you voted yes for that, it meant more likely no same-sex
Yes.
marriage.
Yeah.
If you voted no, it meant you already have same-sex marriage. But by the language through that sausage process, they don't make it easy. So the constitutional amendment passed in 2013. The legislature had the power to reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples. Did the legislature reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples? No, because in 1996, I think, 1998, we voted on that. In 2013, they created same-sex marriage. So that whole thing we went through in the 90s to make marriage one man and one woman in Hawaii didn't work.
And it's so funny because we said that at the time. We were like, we didn't like the question because we knew that they could do that. Because all we were doing is saying they have the right to reserve marriage, which meant that they also had the right to not reserve marriage.
Correct.
So we knew that.
So
yes,
legislative shenanigans is how these questions got on the ballot.
And
so you got to realize that.
And the language on these questions, for everybody that has gone through elections before, they know they're not written in normal language.
So what I want us to do is think through this process when we're responding to voting on the amendments. First of all, it's not easy to understand why those committees came up with that language unless you were there. If you're looking at your ballot, you don't know. Okay? It's important that the government be transparent, so they have to do this educational piece. Go get it and read it so that you do understand. So I came up with these rules. For me, if you want to amend the document that forms your government and I have to be asked to vote yes, no, I'm not doing it. Change my mind.
So you always start with a no.
I always am not going to vote for it because I like it the way it is, and your sausage isn't making it better for me. It's making it better for the government.
So you're like Louder with Crowder that says, change my mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, number 2, it's the duty of the proposer of this sausage-made language to transparently explain to me and you why this is something I should vote for. Why should this change my mind? They should explain to me the reason for it and what the change would be at the end. That's why you look at the paperwork that they're required to provide, which the links are here, and see if it makes sense to you. Number 3, read the proposed language that's on the ballot. Read the ballot language. So we'll get to those in a minute. If I can't tell from the language why it's needed, you haven't changed my mind. I'm still voting no. Number 4, if the language doesn't tell me the intended result, you haven't changed my mind. I'm still voting no. And finally, if somehow I am ready to vote yes because all of that stuff was met in the language, if I'm going to vote yes, I have to think about what are the unintended consequences that could arise if I do vote yes. Because chances are they're never going to tell you that. You just got to pray about it. Let the Holy Spirit tell you what's going on here. So let's look at the Kauai one. There's 4.
Before you do that real quick, have you ever voted yes?
I think I voted yes in 1996 on the marriage one. I'm pretty sure I did.
1998.
I'm pretty sure I did, but
that's
that
only
was a
because
long time ago.
Is that the only time?
Sure I did, but I don't have a present recollection of that vote, but I'm sure I did.
Okay.
So question number 1 for our friends on Kauai. Shall the county charter be amended to require that future elections for prosecuting attorney occur at the same time as the county's regularly scheduled elections? So I'm asking myself, they vote for the prosecutor at a different time? How dumb is that? Who thought that was a good idea? Right? Because that's what it looks like. Well, that's not the reason, but that's the way the sausage wrote it. It's like, what? So if you get the materials from the Kauai Council on what this is, it says the purpose of this amendment is to change the charter to avoid the high cost of conducting a special election for the sole purpose of filling a vacancy of the prosecuting attorney. And so I'm saying, oh, okay, but why do you have to have a special election? Why aren't they doing it at the same time? I don't get it. So the background from Maui County or Kauai County. Recently, something happened that they're reacting to. They want to amend the charter to react to something that happened once? This is weird. I'm still a no. Recent resignation of the prosecuting attorney triggered a special election for the sole purpose of electing a prosecuting attorney, according to the charter. The cost to the county was $500,000. This amendment would allow the first deputy prosecutor to serve as the prosecuting attorney until the seat's filled in a regularly scheduled election. So I'm saying, oh, well, that kind of makes a little sense. But then they get it weird. The special election, not the regularly scheduled, to fill a vacancy would be held at the same time as the county's election if the vacancy occurs more than 3 days before the filing deadline for the election. And I'm thinking, like, this is bizarre. How is this ever going to happen again? Well, who knows? And if it happens later than 3 days before, then you have another special election anyway. So this whole thing is being requested because a prosecuting attorney resigned. Okay, why did he resign? I have no idea.
Well, it could be anything. Health reasons. I mean,
it could be anything. But okay.
And it could happen again.
So if the first deputy is unable to serve, then the mayor, and with the approval of the county council, will appoint an interim prosecuting attorney.
So on Kauai, we're talking Sean Kawakami.
So the interesting thing is, what if the first because if you run for prosecutor, you're a politician, right? And if you're the first deputy, you're a lawyer. So if the first deputy is unable to serve for some reason, but what if he just doesn't want to be a politician? So he's able to serve, but he doesn't desire to serve. They don't even address that. So anyway, my thoughts are, what are the rules when other elected officials on Kauai resign? How do they do their elections? Or is it the same? Why doesn't the charter just throw the prosecutor into there? I don't get this. It makes no sense to me. My second thought is, if the deputy prosecuting attorney is able but unwilling to serve, this hasn't solved any problem at all. So my conclusion is I'm voting no. If I lived on Kauai, I would vote no because they don't answer these really important questions. And the unintended consequence of the mayor and the council picking the prosecuting attorney instead of the voters bothers me greatly. We don't know why this guy resigned. Could have been political pressure. Could have been blackmail from the mayor and the council because they didn't like him or whatever. Who knows? So a lot of possible mischief, a lot of possible corruption. So I would vote no. That's the way I would look at this. The next one, shall the charter be amended to remove Article 30, which allows the county council to create an electric power corporation? And I'm like, why is the county of Kauai creating an electric power corporation? What? What is this? Okay, purpose of this amendment is to remove charter provisions that allow the council to create an electric power corporation like the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, KIUC, to avoid duplication of service and limit the unnecessary growth of government. I'm like, you're changing my mind here. What is this, right? Well, not too fast, Swifty Hochberg. Here's what it's really about, according to the paper sent out by the Kauai Council. In 2002, voters approved the amendment that gave the council the ability to create this cooperative because it was in response to a proposed sale of Kauai Electric Company to KIUC. And they were worried that if the utility cooperative failed, they wouldn't be able to serve electricity to Kauai. So because the KIUC has been adequately managed and does operate the electrical power system, now they want to take that out. So that's what's really going on. You wouldn't know that from the title. So my thoughts are, okay, if this was necessary in 2002, why is it no longer necessary? Maybe it would be needed if the KIUC fails in the future. So we're currently experiencing huge increases in the cost of electricity, all this stuff going on with the energy department and the federal government. Maybe KIUC will go bad. So why not just leave it on the books? Why vote to delete it? So I'm voting no. Oh, down to 9 minutes. Okay, we're only going to get Kauai in here. I think we're going to have to do another show for Oahu. Number 3, shall the charter be amended to give the Salary Commission the authority to establish the maximum salary for elected and appointed officials? I need go no further to conclude. I don't like commissions empowered with more and more and more authority. We don't vote for them. We vote for the people who don't want to be accountable for these decisions, so they create commissions and they pass the authority over, and it's not their problem anymore. So it's going to take a lot to convince me otherwise. I don't like commissions. This is a spending issue. They want the commission to set salaries, not the elected people on the council, not the mayor. I'm not so much for this. So right now, the Salary Commission extensively researches and analyzes all the salaries. They make a report to the county council, who can reject all or portions by resolution and a vote of 5 or more members. I like that. You elect on Kauai, the council members. You hold them responsible for this decision making. This is America, okay? So I'm voting no. I would say don't give this authority over to non-elected people. We need to get rid of hiding authority and accountability. Got to get rid of it. Number 4, shall the charter be amended by removing portions of section 19.17 that requires security bonds for certain officers and employees? You have to be a lawyer or an insurance executive to have any clue what this is talking about. So, a surety bond is a guarantee from an insurance company that your county buys with money in advance, so that if you have an unscrupulous county employee that steals, the county doesn't lose the money because the surety gives the county the money back. They want to get rid of that. Really? Why? I don't know. Interesting. So what they say is the purpose is to provide the county with flexibility, or if I was Biden, I would say flexibility, in purchasing insurance or surety bonds by eliminating the provision that requires the purchase of surety bonds. And then they go on to say surety bonds for public officials generally provide a financial guarantee against loss, specifically that the official duties of an office will be faithful and legally performed during a specific term. And then they say this: insurance can provide similar coverage, not the same guaranteed coverage. They're losing me. They're not going to convince me here. So what they say is that, and I think it might be contrary to the requirement, the county's bundling policies of insurance rather than getting bonds. And if they have been doing that, they've been violating the charter. And it looks to me possibly like they're trying to change the charter so they can continue, because somebody may have brought it up. I don't know that that's true. So my thoughts are, it sounds like the county has not been following the law. I don't know that's true. But I'm always opposed to changing a charter provision to validate or ratify previous invalid, unlawful conduct. That doesn't work for me, ever. Second, requiring the security bonds was a good idea. It is a good idea still. What changed since then to make it not as good as similar coverage by insurance policies? What's the difference in the protection between the surety bond guarantee and the insurance policy that mentioned similar coverage? They don't tell us. What's the actual price differential that they might save by getting these insurance policies instead of the guarantee? Maybe it's worth it. What happens if you leave Article 30 on the books? Is somebody going to get in trouble because they've not been following it? Let them go to jail. So my conclusion is I would vote no on all 4 Kauai charter things. They did not change my mind. So let's chat for a few minutes, because we shouldn't get into Oahu yet.
Okay, so no, that's really good. So let's talk about the person who they've heard what you said, they agree with everything, so they don't go look up what you're.
No. I am just like you. I'm just me. What does a good pastor say? Don't take my word for it. Go read the scriptures yourself.
Yes. And of course, we want you to look at it because, again, there may be a testimony that was submitted at one of these hearings that will explain why they have to do it.
But they aren't telling us.
They may not be because, maybe they're, I don't know. I don't think they're limited on words. I think they could go as deep as they want to.
Well, they're probably limited on words from a marketing perspective. Too many words aren't going to get read.
Right. So remember that what Jim is coming from is he's coming from the change my mind. So it's always for him going to be no, unless they have done a good job of telling him why it should be yes. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad way to look at these charter amendment questions. Mind. Yeah, because I think that a lot of times the way the law is written currently may be pretty good. It may have some issues, but you got to tell me what those issues are. And like you said, what are the unintended consequences? Because that's the key right there.
It is.
Because it may sound like a really good reason to change it, but then what happens later?
Shall the legislature have the power to reserve? The unintended consequences is exactly what we got. Same-sex marriage.
Can we just say that words have meaning? Right?
So the main point for Kauai, you've got the substance. For Maui, Big Island, Oahu, this takes a little bit more effort than picking up the ballot and checking a box. No, you got to actually own this. You have exactly the same ownership interest in the government as 330 million other Americans. Nobody has more power than anybody else on this election, the voting on the ballot stuff. You need to own it. Please look in the link to your island's county council with the information on your ballot issues, why the education materials explain what they explain. Think it through according to my 5 rules.
And find out what it means, a blank vote, because as Jim mentioned earlier, a blank vote might be a no vote. It might not be, right? I mean,
correct.
So you got to find out for your particular island the way that it's handled.
If you leave it blank and it's counted as a yes because it wasn't affirmatively no, you're supporting it without knowing. And
yeah, so you want to make sure that, and that's really the point of what we're saying. Make your vote mean something. It's like we talk about this when we do our trainings on voting, right? It's like having a best man or a maid of honor. They stand up with you at the wedding because they're saying to the community, I stand with this couple, right?
Is that what that means?
That's exactly what that means. I have actually said no to someone who wanted me to be their maid of honor because that was a train wreck waiting to happen. And you know what? It broke her heart. Her and I got into a fight. There were tears. But you know what? They didn't last a year.
Oh, no.
And I remember having coffee with her. And
you
she
hexed
said,
them.
No, she said, because I tried to tell her what my red flags were because I saw some serious red flags. And she said to me, I wish I had listened to you. That's the importance of voting. When you're checking that check mark for this candidate or this charter amendment or that constitutional amendment, you are saying, amen. That's what you're saying. So what you want to do is see if people, if what your vote is going to mean is problems down the road, then better you say no. So for people on Kauai, we appreciate you. We love you. KESU Radio. Make sure that you check out the resources listed at hawaiifamilyforum.org or at Hawaii Family Forum's YouTube. All of the resources we talked about will be there. And we will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.